Well, hello to everyone who's watching this special broadcast. I am Ridhima Bhatnagar, and we're back with another conversation that has a lot of red flags, that a lot of people interested to try and understand what this new viral infection in town is and why are we seeing rising cases, how dangerous is it, how similar is it to some of the viral infections that we've seen in the past. To answer all your questions that you've been sending us, I have with me Dr. Trupti Gilada, who is, of course, a specialist to help us understand what this new viral infection is and why are we seeing these rise of cases. Dr. Trupti, good to have you on the broadcast with us. So a lot of people are very concerned about this new rise of viral infections that we see. Just to begin with the basics, how different is it than a viral that we all know about, or is it just the same, but we're just suddenly seeing rise of cases?
So the most of the viral infections that we are seeing right now, especially in the monsoon, is the influenza virus, and we always see that rise in number of cases just when the monsoon starts. And this always has that seasonal pattern because of the
Hmm.
humidity, because of the overcrowding indoors, and that's exactly what we are seeing right now. Fortunately, what we are seeing over the last maybe 2 months, most of the viral infections that are presenting to us are influenza virus or other viral illnesses and not so much COVID. But talking about COVID, we know that there are a few states that have started seeing a rise in the number of
Hmm.
cases, like Kerala. So while we do understand that most of it might be influenza, we are still on a lookout for any rising number of cases for COVID-19.
What are the kind of symptoms that you're seeing in most patients today, Dr. Tripti, with this new viral infection? The reason I'm asking because the minute we decided to, have a discussion on this, a lot of people wrote in and they just want to know what are the symptoms that they should watch out for because today everything is overlapping. You have similar symptoms for COVID as well. So when should people actually go ahead and get tested, and what are the most common symptoms that we're seeing currently?
So the most common symptoms that we are seeing with influenza are pretty much the same that we see with COVID. So both of them are upper respiratory tract infections to begin with. So they do present with a dry cough sometimes, fever, runny nose, body ache, and headaches, and just a feeling of fatigue. Now, if you remember, or if someone has had COVID, this is pretty much what we also see in COVID.
Yeah,
So, if we were to actually pinpoint just based on symptoms whether this is COVID or influenza, it's very difficult to do that.
hmm.
We sometimes we will say that influenza presents with much more runny nose and like a wet phlegm. But honestly speaking, that isn't like the only thing that will help us differentiate from COVID. We've seen patients with COVID have a runny
Okay.
nose. The one thing that might help us is, we know that people who've had COVID recently over the last 3, 4
Hmm.
months and have an upper respiratory tract infection again,
Hmm.
they are more likely to have influenza right now rather than
Okay.
COVID. But having said that, if someone does have any fever or any of these symptoms,
Hmm.
they should still isolate themselves because isolation helps not just COVID, it helps any
Sure.
infection from spreading to the other people in the family. And like COVID, even influenza is extremely infectious. So we know that when one person comes down with the
Yeah.
infection, the other people in the family will follow in the next few weeks.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Tripti, what I want to understand is the reason why I wanted to do this today because, currently the sense is leaving states like Kerala and Maharashtra that overall the COVID situation is pretty stable. But because you have reopening of schools that are happening across states, you have the festive season, and this is usually a time when we do see a spike in cases. So, what is the sense, or what would your advice be to people that yes, you want to step out, you want to spend time with your family, but what are the kind of precautions that you should follow to ensure that you don't fall trap to this viral infection, which also, if I understand this correctly, we see this with a change of weather as well.
That's right. And in fact, I think a lot of people have just forgotten COVID.
Yeah.
It was just 3 or 4 months back, and unfortunately, our memory is so short that just because we've started seeing a dip in the number of cases, we start thinking that COVID is gone. But pretty
Hmm.
much COVID is there, it's just in lesser numbers. So the moment these festivals begin, the one thing that we tell people is we're not saying don't celebrate festivals.
Hmm.
What is a strict no-no is large gatherings. those are events that turn out to be super spreader events, and that is what really incites the rise in number of cases after festivities.
Hmm.
So do celebrate your festival, just with your family, maybe your few friends, which is like a bubble.
Yeah.
What we definitely say is, definitely, you can expand that little bubble to people who are vaccinated, because
Sure.
that way you're not putting yourself at risk and the others at risk. And
Hmm.
that's the advantage of vaccination, is that even if someone does tend to get COVID after this, we know that it will be mild. They will not reach the
Hmm.
hospital. They're lesser likely to die of the infection. So if there are still a lot of people who've still not taken their vaccine,
Yeah.
so, and that's the mistake we made between the first and the second wave. We thought COVID
Right.
was gone and we were just so slow on vaccination. Now that we are seeing a lull again, I think we should use this lull to just ramp up vaccination. I
Hmm.
mean, there should be no hesitancy in vaccination now. We've seen the benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So go and
Okay.
take your vaccine. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and take that vaccine. That really is our message to everybody watching us every day. Doctor, I also want to understand as far as the COVID cases in the country are concerned now. Other states like Kerala and Maharashtra, yes, they still continue to be very, very worrying. Kerala, of course, still reporting about 20,000 cases. But I want to understand in the overall picture, how many of these cases are we seeing and how much of a change are we seeing in pattern as far as the variant is concerned? Because the Delta variant was our biggest problem because it was seen as to be the most dangerous one. A lot of questions were raised whether we're immune in terms of our vaccine against these variants. How much do we know till now? And what is the kind of patterns that we're watching out from what we're seeing globally as well?
The majority, we've just had data from genetic sequencing across the country from different
Hmm.
states, and it's still predominantly it's Delta. But when it first started, the Delta, the main variant itself, has undergone certain mutations. So,
Hmm.
we have 14 lineages documented till date. We really don't know if there are many more out there. Out of these 14, what we understand is that they behave pretty much similarly. They are not any less or more of a concern than Delta. They are equally infectious. The vaccine is protecting against these variants equally. But what we need to remember is, while we are talking, the virus is still mutating. So we really
Yeah.
don't know when is that new variant out there. For example, the variant in South Africa. It's only after we've seen that it's probably vaccine resistant that we realize, oh, that's a
Hmm.
new variant. So the behavior of a new variant is always in retrospect. So we must understand that while this virus is there, there are going to be new variants. And that's the reason why we encourage even vaccinated people to not forget COVID appropriate behavior. And while we are seeing these rise in number of cases, or maybe the stable number of cases in Kerala and
Yeah.
Maharashtra, to date we think they are still the same variants. Kerala did not have a bad first and second wave when we were seeing it. So
Sure.
they had a lot of population that hadn't developed antibodies,
Hmm.
and so a lot of their cases are in people who are either not vaccinated or did not get COVID in the previous few months. So these are
Okay.
fresh infections. But as we ramp up vaccination, we really hope that these numbers will start dipping.
Okay. Doctor, I also want to talk about the other aspect. The reason we're talking about this viral infection and what we're seeing with the variants is also because we're seeing a lot more sectors now open up, the latest one being schools. Now, the jury on that is divided. While, of course, you make that argument that students have been and children have been literally caged for the last year and a half and they need to have human interaction. But at what cost? I want to understand your assessment of the decision that has been taken to reopen schools at a time when we don't have a vaccine for children in India.
Yeah, so when we talk about reopening schools, a lot of strategy should go into reopening schools. It's not just we decide a date and we reopen schools. We really need to make sure the all the teachers are vaccinated, the parents are vaccinated, or whoever lives in the
Hmm.
house with those kids
Hmm.
need to be vaccinated. Because if the kids are not going to be vaccinated, we need to ensure that the circle around them is vaccinated.
Hmm.
And even with the kids, especially with the DNA vaccine that will become available for kids above 12 years of age, though it has been approved for everyone above 12, so even adults can take it.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a strategy where that DNA vaccine is reserved only for children, because if we start giving that vaccine to even adults, we will not have
Yeah.
enough vaccine for children. So
Correct.
while we have only one vaccine for children, let's reserve it only for children. Let's at least vaccinate kids above 12 and then open
Hmm.
in a staggered manner. Obviously, we cannot open all the days for all the kids. They will have to
Hmm.
design a strategy where they probably have
Sure.
one third or half the kids come in on one day and see how it goes. But the entire infrastructure or logistics around reopening school needs to be ensured, where vaccination
Okay.
forms the main pillar of reopening schools.
Okay, perfect. So, of course, we need to open it with caution. Of course, reopening is also very important, but you need to put a proper protocol and strategy in place. And you need to prioritize vaccination for children. That's the word that's coming in from Dr. Trupti. So, we leave the conversation there. We hope we could help answer so many questions around the new viral infection, the impact of various variants that we are seeing, and also how you need to prepare yourself for that upcoming festive season, because we still need to remember, and we say this every day, the pandemic is not over. The virus is mutating, changing its form. So it's better to be safe than sorry. We leave the conversation there. Thank you so much for watching.